You see a wildflower growing by the water and you think, oh, that's pretty. But what if there's way more to it? What if that flower is holding on to some serious secrets? Well, today, we're going to see if we can get this one to talk. Let's get into it.
So here it is, Iris versicolor, the northern blue flag. And yeah, you've probably seen it before, maybe by a riverbank or in a wet field. But what you're looking at is so much more than a pretty face. It's a land protector, it's a living time capsule of history, and it's a powerful chemical factory, all in one package. Today, we're going to unpack that whole story. Okay, but before we go any further, we have to stop for a second because this is super important. Everything we're talking about today, it's for educational purposes only. This is not medical advice. The blue flag iris is a really potent and yes, potentially toxic plant. So please, you have to talk to a trained professional before you even think about handling or consuming any plant we discuss here. Seriously.
All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with its secret job as an unseen engineer. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of its anatomy, so you know exactly what you're looking at. From there, we'll dive into its incredible history as a medicine, check that against what modern science says, and wrap up with the most important part, how to handle it with care.
So, let's start at the very beginning, with the blue flag's most basic job. And it's a big one. It's protecting the actual ground that it's growing on.
We all see the flower, right? That's what gets our attention. But its real superpower, it's totally hidden right under the surface. The true hero of this plant is its incredibly dense, creeping root system. We call it a rhizome.
And this just shows you perfectly how it all works. That thick web of rhizomes, they all lock together. It's like a natural living net holding all the soil in place. So when you get a big rain or runoff, the soil doesn't just wash away, it stays put. That's exactly why you see ecologists planting blue flag in restoration projects. It's an absolute champ at protecting shorelines and keeping riverbanks from eroding.
Okay, so it's an amazing engineer, but how do you know for sure, like 100%, that what you're looking at is actually a northern blue flag? Let's break down its anatomy. This is where it gets really interesting.
To get this right, you gotta look close. First, check out the leaves. They look like little swords, and they grow in this really cool flat fan shape. Now, here's a huge clue. The vein running down the middle, it's barely there, almost flat. That's a key difference from an invasive lookalike we'll talk about. Then you've got the flower itself. 3 big droopy parts. Those are called falls, and they have that signature yellow blotch at the base. And then 3 smaller petals standing straight up. Those are the standards.
And this chart, this is where we really separate the lookalikes. Let's zoom in on that colored patch at the base, the throat signal. Our northern blue flag has a kind of greenish yellow splotch. But the southern blue flag, it's a bright school bus yellow, totally different. And the invasive yellow flag? Well, remember that leaf vein we talked about? On the invasive one, it's super prominent, really raised. Getting these little details right is absolutely critical. But if you happen to have a science lab in your back pocket, there is one thing that is the absolute, definitive, no arguments allowed giveaway. And it's this number, 108. That's how many chromosomes Iris versicolor has. It's something called an allopolyploid, basically a super stable hybrid of 2 other iris species that got together after the glaciers pulled back. Its cousin Iris virginica only has 70 or 72. That genetic fingerprint makes it completely unique.
So, this unique plant has, as you can imagine, a really long and complicated history with people. Let's get into that now. Its story as a powerful medicine, which really begins with the deep, sophisticated knowledge of indigenous peoples.
Honestly, when you look at the historical record, it's just staggering. Different indigenous nations had such specific, distinct uses for blue flag. It shows this incredibly detailed understanding of what it could do. The Chippewa, for instance, made a poultice from the root for sores. The Delaware used it for kidney and liver problems. The Ojibwa used it as a strong emetic, but they also carried the root as a protective charm against snakes. I mean, the breadth of knowledge is just incredible. And this knowledge didn't just stay in one place. It was picked out by a group of doctors in the 19th century called the Eclectic physicians, and they really ran with it. Dr. Ellingwood here even said it was thought to treat pretty much all forms of chronic jaundice. They really saw it as this powerful tool for kickstarting the body's own detox systems, especially for the liver and the lymphatic system.
And what's so important to get here is that this wasn't just some fringe folk remedy. Nope, Iris versicolor went mainstream for its time. It became a staple of frontier medicine, and get this, it was officially listed in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia for 75 years, from 1820 to 1895. Doctors used it all the time as what they called an alternative. That's basically an old-timey word for a blood purifier, something they thought could clear out impurities and just get the body working right again.
Okay, so that's the history. But what does modern science have to say about all these claims? Let's switch gears and look at the pharmacology. And what's fascinating is that we can draw a pretty straight line here. That historical idea of a blood purifier, well, it actually lines up with what we know today. The plant contains compounds, like one called irritation, that do stimulate bile flow and get the lymphatic system moving. But, and this is a huge but, it's crucial to understand that there are 0 modern clinical trials that prove it can be used for any specific disease. The science just isn't there yet.
And all that power comes with a serious downside. Using this plant is a real balancing act. If you get it wrong, it can cause some pretty major stomach and gut problems. We're talking nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. And even just touching the fresh root can cause skin irritation for some people.
Look, I can't say this strongly enough. This is a powerful substance. It should absolutely never be used during pregnancy or given to kids, ever. Using it requires a trained professional who really gets what's called the therapeutic window, that razor-thin line between a dose that helps and a dose that harms.
And that brings us to our last section. And honestly, it's the most important one. How do we live alongside this plant safely?
Okay, the single most dangerous mistake anyone could ever make is to mix up blue flag iris with this other plant, False Hellebore. The difference is all in the leaves. Remember how the iris leaves are in that flat, sword-like fan? False Hellebore is totally different. Its leaves are wide, oval-shaped, and they're pleated like an accordion, wrapping around the stem in a spiral.
And the consequences of getting this wrong are, well, they're dire. The iris can make you really sick to your stomach. But False Hellebore? It's life-threateningly poisonous. It can cause a massive drop in your blood pressure and heart rate, and you would need emergency medical help immediately. There is 0 room for error here. Misidentification is simply not an option.
So that's the blue flag iris. It's this incredible, complex being, isn't it? It's an engineer holding our riverbanks together. It's a living library of medicine and history. And it's a powerful toxin that demands our absolute respect. So it leaves us with a question, right? How do we hold all of that at once? How do we coexist with it responsibly? It's definitely something to think about next time you see one, standing quietly by the edge of the water.